Ever wonder why some languages stick around for centuries while others just fade away? Well, it's not random. Turns out the survival of a language has everything to do with the world around it, its own unique environment, or what we can call its ecology.
Linguist William Mackey really hits the nail on the head here. He compares dead languages to fossils, which is such a powerful image, right? They're the remains of something that just couldn't adapt to a changing world. So what are these environmental forces that can turn a living, breathing language into a fossil?
To figure that out, we've got to first understand how a language actually disappears. And it turns out there are really only two main ways it can happen.
So, on one hand, a language can die out pretty suddenly and tragically if its speakers are wiped out by a disaster or, violence. But the more common and honestly the more interesting path is when the next generation simply switches. They adopt a new language. This is what's known as a geolinguistic shift, and that's the process that tells us the real ecological story.
This idea of a shift leads us to this really powerful framework for understanding how it all works. It's a totally different way of looking at how languages interact with each other.
It's called the Ecology of Language, and the big idea here is that instead of studying a language in a vacuum, we treat it like a species in its habitat. We look at how it relates to all the other languages and all the social, economic, and cultural stuff going on in its environment. It's all about how everything is connected.
Now, this is a really important point. This analogy to a biological ecosystem is great, but we have to be super careful not to take it too literally.
And this is the key difference right here. A language isn't some biological creature that evolves on its own. Nope, it's a learned cultural behavior. It's not what people are, it's what people do. And that means its survival is 100% determined by human choices and the pressures of their society.
Okay, so if it's all about behavior, what are these environmental pressures that push a community to either stick with their language or jump ship to a new one?
Well, it's this whole web of different forces all working together. You've got the economic power of a global language, like English, for example. You've got a community's core values, how similar or different competing languages are, and even something as personal as who people decide to marry. All of these things create this intense pressure cooker for a language's ecosystem. Let's look at a really specific example. How similar two languages are to each other. This is what linguists call interlingual distance, and it has a huge, totally measurable effect on whether a language survives.
Check this out. This is data from Canada back in 1971. In Toronto, which is English-speaking, a whopping 82% of Dutch immigrants shifted to English. But get this, in French-speaking Montreal, that number drops all the way down to 64%. Why? Well, Dutch is pretty similar to English, but it's really different from French. That dissimilarity, it basically acted like a buffer, slowing the whole shift down. It's almost as if the languages were repelling each other.
The internal values of a community are also a massive factor. For centuries, the motto in Quebec was basically, the language is the guardian of the faith. French survived because it was deeply tied to religion. But then in the 1960s, things changed. The core value shifted to economic well-being, which put French in direct competition with English, the language of big business. This huge internal shift in what people cared about led directly to political action to protect French.
And here's another huge environmental factor: social integration. In some parts of southern Ontario, the rate of intermarriage between French and English speakers hit nearly 50%. So this social behavior, marrying someone from a different language group, has a direct linguistic result. You get bilingual families, and very often, the kids end up integrating into the school system of the more dominant language. That just dramatically speeds up the language shift, sometimes in just one generation.
The amazing thing is, this whole framework isn't just some interesting theory. Today, these ecological factors can be measured, they can be mapped, and they can even be used to predict what's going to happen to a language. Researchers have built this incredible toolkit. They can now scientifically measure the attraction or repulsion between languages. They can create these super detailed profiles of all the pressures on a community, and they can even map language use house by house.
Just look at this example from Moncton, an Acadian French community. By making a pressure profile like this one, they could see exactly where English was taking over, in business, in media, in the schools. And that insight allowed them to take very specific, targeted actions, like starting French-language newspapers, TV stations, and even a university to rebalance that ecosystem and support their own language.
And with technology like geocoding, they can take all that census data and turn it into a visual map of language change. I mean, you can actually see street by street where a language is gaining ground and where it's losing it. And you can see how that lines up with where the schools, churches, and jobs are. It's incredible.
So, in the end, looking at language this way does more than just explain why some tongues become fossils. It actually gives us a scientific model to see what's coming. And that leaves us with a really deep question. If we can predict a language's fate, and we understand the forces that are shaping it, what is our responsibility? What should we do about it?